So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video in terms of Gears 6. As we're ramping up and getting more and more and more and more excited for a potential Gears 6, I want to talk about the some of the things that we would like to see in Gear 6. Now, this video is coming to us from Hadou Kid. I reacted to one of his videos in the past, and I love this guy. I think he's got some really cool content. I want to talk, though, in this one, he made a video called 10 Things We Want in Gear 6. And I'm going to react to this video. Obviously, I think that he's got some things that definitely that a number of us want to see in Gear 6. And I want to kind of give my opinion on some of this stuff. And I think it's important, guys, like I said earlier, it's important that we put a spotlight on some of the other creators out there that are creating content in Gears of War, because they may be people that you don't even know about that are creating some pretty solid Gears of War content. And I would definitely want to use, my channel and what I do to kind of give these guys a voice as well, because you can hear from me all the time about things that I would like to see in Gears of War and or in Gears 6, and want to see as far as the future goes of the Gears of War franchise. But it's important that we also give some of these other guys a voice as well. So let's go ahead and do that.
What's happening? As always, I am Hadou Kid, and today I want to talk to you about Gears of War. If you don't know, I'm a pretty big Gears of War fan. I've been playing Gears since the very first game, and there's something about Gears as a franchise, the gameplay, the mechanics, the characters we've grown to know and love, and just a lot of the nostalgic moments over the last decade or so. Something about how Gears has mixed in with that and just been a big part of, I think, my life, and I'm assuming a lot of you guys' lives as well. Now, I know the games have changed a lot over the years, and some of them have been considered more top tier classics versus others that didn't necessarily hit the mark. But as a Gears of War fan, I still find myself coming in and out of Gears 5, going into matches, linking up with a couple buddies and just playing as if it was back in 2006 or whenever the first game came out. And while I'm playing this game and getting a bunch of kills or thinking about rage quitting, I can't help but think about what the next game is going to be like. Now, I know they haven't said anything officially about Gears 6 yet, like what it's going to be about, when it's going to come out, or even if it's going to come out. But as I play through these matches and I think about all the things I've seen in Gears games and overall what the fans have talked about, it made me wonder, what are some things that could go into Gears 6 to really make it that game that really wraps it up, brings it home, and ultimately gives the fans the Gears experience they want. So without further ado, here are 10 things I think they should put in Gears 6 in order to make it that home run game that we've all been looking for as Gears of War fans.
Okay, before we even get into the video here, one of the things that he said was wrapping up Gears of War. And I disagree with that notion 100%. I think that Gears of War still has so many stories still to tell. I look at Gears as like a franchise that could continue creating games in the future, novels, comics, movies, all of these things, right? We obviously got confirmation by Rod Ferguson, who was the studio head at the Coalition at the time. He said that a Gears 6, a Gears 7, as well as a Gears of War movie were all confirmed. So I agree that Gears 6 is going to be kind of wrapping up this trilogy that the Coalition's been working on, but I don't agree that it's going to be the end of Gears of War's, like, from the perspective of the games. The only way that it's going to be the end of the games is if we have, as the community, allow that to happen in terms of like not supporting it. Like if you create content, perfect, guys, continue creating content. If you are a streamer, keep streaming. But if you don't do those things, you got to be supporting your favorite content creators and your favorite streamers moving forward. And we have to like work together as almost like a unit and as a community to voice our opinion to the Coalition and such in a like civil way, obviously not being toxic and things of that nature. If we do the things that we're supposed to do, and the Coalition does their part to kind of update the game and all of those things, we're going to see this thing really move forward in a positive direction, and it won't be the end of Gears of War as we know it in terms of the games. I think that there's still so much left to be told. Now, when Gears 6 comes out, obviously I want it to be the best game ever, and so I want them to just support Gears 6, and I think, as long as it's like a great game, could it be like a CSGO that it's just supported over the years and you just keep playing Gears 6? That'd be something that would be, I would love that, right? I think that there's still so much story left, though, to be told in the Gears of War universe that I feel like they're going to make more Gears of War games, especially because Microsoft's not going to buy the rights to Gears of War, create Coalition Gears to just make 3 titles. I feel like they're going to want to make a lot more in the future. But obviously they won't if Gears 6 doesn't do well from a commercial perspective, a community perspective. And so I get what he's saying about this, and I would love them to wrap up this trilogy in a way, but we've got to really push this thing and echo future games into existence.
So one thing that stands out when I think about the old Gears games versus the new ones is just the dark and gritty vibe and even look of them. Most of us who started at Gears 1 fell in love with just how dark the game felt, literally, and how it looked as well too, between the lighting and just some of the development of the characters and the story elements. It really puts you in this feeling that you were really there with Delta Squad going through this just post-apocalyptic alien takeover world. And I know for Gears 5 at least, especially with the introduction of the open world system, it seems like they were trying to introduce more, vibrance and ultimately showing off these great worlds and this great development. And don't get me wrong, Gears 5 graphically looks fantastic. It's amazing. But I think in the process, maybe even in the introduction of the open world aspects, you kind of lost a little bit of that feeling of despair tied in with just ultimately peril that the original games kind of helped create. And they had a good balance as well, while they introduced good elements of gore and even just weight behind just a good headshot crunch or a chainsaw, through a locust, and then just taking on waves and waves of these things. There was also a little bit of humor baked in there that helped balance it out. It gave it a really good mix of danger and concern for the characters while also kind of picking the right moments to lighten it up and really allow you to breathe in between big scenes and big moments. So I think that's just something to take into Gear 6. Again, I know we don't know what the story really is about, but if they're able to create this darker vibe, I think back to when we first met the Krill or the Wretches or all the old iconic enemies we were first introduced to. Just even in the look, if you can create kind of that just darker with pockets of light, but just kind of, dark, gritty vibe to the game, I think it really helps create an element that brings us in, kind of like how a good horror movie or a good thriller can suck you into the moment, but also still provide enough vibrance to allow you to enjoy everything going on around you.
Okay, so I want to talk about this. I agree with Hadouken on this one for sure. I think that Gears 5 was a little bit brighter, which it was kind of just a brighter title in general when we look at like from the maps to the even like the campaign and such. It was just overall more bright and kind of crisp. And I love from a graphical perspective, it looks great. But I agree that Gear 6 needs to be a little bit more of a darker tone for sure. Moving forward, a grittier tone, kind of like what the original games were like, where it was just darker, grittier. I thought Gears of War 4 was pretty dark and gritty, and maybe the Coalition wanted to move a little bit lighter with Gears 5. But I just think that, yes, darker and grittier really gives you that Gears of War vibe, that Gears of War feel, that hard mature rating that we had. We had Gears 5. That was a little bit of a brighter title. Now I think it's time to go back to that darker, grittier vibe. GXL says, lack of support is what killed Gears Esports. 4K viewers on Twitch for Summer Major a few weeks ago. Yeah, I think that it was lack of support, but I also think that it was I think that the community didn't support Gears Esports as much as it should have. So I do put it on certainly I put it on, the coalition. When we had Gears of War 4, I felt like Gears Esports had a very good path forward. And then with Gears 5, it felt like the support wasn't as much there, not as much promotion, things of that nature. But I also think that the community didn't support it like we should have. Lots of people should have been like, hosting watch parties, things of that nature. And we didn't do that. And so I think that a lot, even though the coalition didn't support it, I think that we as a community didn't cherish Gears Esports for what it was. But yes. Let's see here. We'll be lucky to see Gears 6 at all if the game isn't selling. Regardless of any confirmations, things will change. Why spend millions in development to create a game that's only going to get a loss? I don't think that, I look at, Gears 5 was a smash success for Xbox. It's come out that the numbers and all of that were very good for Gears 5. So I think that Gears 6 is going to sell. It's going to sell well, and I think that they're going to release it on Xbox. It'll go on Xbox Game Pass. So I think it's going to be a big success, commercial success in terms of from selling units and such. It's just the support long term. That's where we have to kind of see what happens, because Halo Infinite had an incredible launch and was doing insane numbers, and then it's kind of slowly teetered over time, especially from the HCS perspective. Halo Championship series is not doing so well right now, simply because they don't have enough there's too much lull, months before tournaments and stuff, and so that's been a big issue for sure. Gears 1 and 2 had the best atmosphere. I would say, Gears 1 to 3 I thought had the best atmospheres for sure. They had great atmosphere. I thought Gears of War 4 kind of went back to somewhat of that Gears of War 1 or 2 atmosphere. But yes, they had great atmospheres for sure. I'd like to kind of capture some of that at least in Gears 6 for sure.
Another thing I think about with some of the newer games is just a lot of the veteran or legacy characters kind of take a back seat to the new main cast, and it makes sense when you're trying to make them the stars of the show, but I think most fans at this point aren't very attached to the main group of JD, Dell, and Kate. I think there's not as much investment in them as there was in just Dom, Marcus, Cole, and Baird. And if you look at a lot of the requests that fans make for content and multiplayer especially, a lot of people are just essentially asking for skins and content for their favorite older characters. There aren't really a whole lot of requests for Kate and JD and Dell and just the new cast that didn't end up really hitting the mark with a lot of old and new fans, I don't think. So it'd be cool in Gears 6 to kind of see them bring back a lot of essential characters to the story at that point and tying them into the story somehow, giving them more epic moments so they're not just kind of like old and decrepit and useless at this point. Because even Marcus, he's fighting alongside them, but he's kind of in like a backseat mentor position where he's not doing a whole lot. And I don't know, I think it just doesn't really do him justice or the story justice as much as it could. So if you think about just the idea of doing more callback moments to old references in previous Gears games, it could be anything to a Cole Train speech that really, takes us back to when he spoke about the Queen in Gears 2, or something like as stupid as, who wants toast? And, Marcus and Dom talking about, I like it crispy, just terrible impressions, but you get the point. Like, just callbacks to moments that will really bring out the nostalgia in us, I think will be a really cool add to Gear 6. Another idea is just more generational moments. At this point, a lot of father-son, father-daughter soldiers exist. JD and Marcus are obviously father and son. So having a fight scene where they're really like just back-to-back going at it, fighting with each other would be really cool. At this point, Cole has a daughter apparently, so him and his daughter, kicking some Locust ass and giving out a woo at the end would just, I don't know, I think that'd be cool. Or even like a Carmine moment where you see Clayton just going off and dedicating, a beatdown to all of his siblings. I don't know, that seems like just those kind of moments that give you goosebumps that I think will really set off the last game as far as like a bringing it home kind of thing. And also just being able to give a lot of these characters closure in a way that's cool and not just killing them off necessarily. Seems like it'd be a cool thing to just see in the new Gears game.
I want to talk about that. She's talking about legacy characters, and I agree that, a lot of people just want to go back to when it comes to skins and stuff, they just want to basically have stuff on Marcus and, on the old legacy characters. The issue to me isn't so much that people didn't like JD and don't like Kate Diaz. The issue is that the Coalition hasn't given them enough time to kind of adapt or kind of become a part of this thing. So what I'm getting at is, so Gears of War 4, we played as JD, right? And at least for me personally, I was starting to get attached to JD by the end of Gears of War 4. The problem, though, was when we got to Gears 5, we moved on from JD to Kate Diaz. And yet I love Kate Diaz, but I feel like we needed to play as JD again. And the direction that the Coalition took JD Phoenix, I felt I didn't like it at all. They kind of almost made him seem like a douchebag in Gears 5, and then at the end you have to choose whether to kill him or not. And that's what I think the issue is. It's not so much that we're of course we love the legacy characters, but it's the way that they're treating the current characters that I think is the problem, and we're moving on from one character to the next way too quickly. We need to get to lose all these skins, marks, etc. It's not Gears. Add new characters, but take all the crap out. Gears ain't COD, making the game look like a cartoon. So I agree to an extent about the skins and such. I think Gears skins are awesome. I think they're the best when it comes to a third-person shooter title. I think they have the best skins. They're awesome, and they fit Gears of War. It's not like Fortnite where you have all these ridiculous-looking, skins and such. It's different for Gears, and I think the skins on the guns and such are awesome. I want that to continue. Certainly, there's certain things I definitely want changed. The marks are a little bit, I agree with some of those things. I just want really cool looking skins. They kind of got goofy with some of the stuff, like face paints and stuff like that. Not that I'm totally against it, but I think that they could, definitely get better at some of those things. I thought Gears of War 3 had the best skins ever. I'll never forget trying to earn some of those skins and such was I loved it. I thought it was absolutely awesome. I want the grittiness, darkness of OG Gears. I do not need a neon Gnasher that can be seen from spawn put in for kids. Gears is 18 plus, so it should reflect that, and it doesn't. Even executions look childish. I don't think that Gears is really meant for kids. I mean, when we think about it, bodies and limbs are being blown off. So I agree to an extent with some of the skins and some of the face paints and things of that nature, but Gears is still pretty graphic for sure. This one is actually probably one of the more graphic Gears of War titles, just in terms of you shoot someone point blank with a Gnasher. I mean, their entire body explodes. It's you don't really get that in a lot of video games. So I don't think it's necessarily meant for kids. There's definitely certain things that they're trying to kind of tone down a little bit. What I liked was why Gears of War 3 was my favorite Gears ever made was because of the skill gap. So it was very easy to play, but very hard to master. And so anyone could kind of pick up the controller and start playing Gears of War 3. And also, even though it was still that hard mature rating, I still felt like it wasn't so much you shoot someone point blank and every limb comes off or they explode like a bubble or something. It just was, this one is a little bit too much of that, I feel, and sometimes the blood and such looks a little bit over the top.
Old characters. I think one thing that Gears can really take advantage of at this point is a lot of the old comic book lore and content. As far as DLC goes, there's so much that they haven't talked about yet that's really integral to how we got to this point. I think Gears 5 did a good job at helping fill in the blanks for some of the information that we didn't necessarily maybe get out of Gears 2 being in the laboratory and understanding how the queen leaks back to the locusts and how that all kind of leads into E-Day and all that stuff. I think Gears 5 definitely did a good job at incorporating that information into the games. And there's just so much other cool stuff that you could do DLC for, like Marcus when he was a young soldier fighting alongside, Carlos Santiago, or even, when they met Ty. Ty was apparently like a badass in the jungle, and obviously they ended up recruiting him for the COG, but just tying in all these moments to these characters that we know and love, you could have a whole bunch of content, I feel, based off of that. And it just seems like something that in Gear 6, in a flashback maybe, or even just like a side content kind of thing, it'd be cool to include and just help educate people on the real lore of some of the characters we know and love. Now that some of the campaign ones are out the way, we hop into the multiplayer, and I think this is where the bulk of the Gears fans really spend most of their time. So the first one that comes to mind, and this is really across the gaming industry at this point, is just better quality of the game at launch. And I don't mean that in a negative, just attacking way. I just think, a lot of us understand the gaming industry is very fast paced at this point, especially with how much gaming blew up in the past couple years. So, timelines are being crunched down and games are expected to be as good, if not better, than what they were before, and look better and perform better. So understanding all that, just there's a lot of games now at this point that when they launch, they're essentially unplayable for the first week or first couple weeks, and it's expected to have a couple of bugs. But Gears 5, for example, I just think back to how hard that launch was and how many people probably dropped off because they really couldn't even get into the game and enjoy it. I think a lot of Halo players are seeing the same thing with Halo Infinite, obviously to a smaller degree, but this idea that the game will drop and we'll kind of fix it as we go along, I think a lot of players are okay with that, just as long as it's not major fixes that don't even allow us to connect to matches or get kills that we rightfully earned. And when I think back to Gears 5 and how the beta ran, it was actually very difficult to play the beta. You kind of stuck through it because you wanted the unlockables, but the connectivity was almost impossible sometimes. And it's a beta, so you don't really take it that to heart. But the game came out, I think, within the next few months of the beta, which again makes you think you need more time to essentially work out all these bugs and all these issues. So for Gears 6, maybe just spanning that out a little more, allowing the feedback to kind of get baked into the game so that you can really iron out a lot of these things and fine-tune them before the initial drop. That way you maintain a lot of your player base after just the first month or first few weeks. I think it's good, obviously, to have a lot of people playing when the game first comes out. That's a great statistic to have. But I think a sign of a good game is not just how many initial players log in, but how many players you can keep lasting over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, throughout the life cycle of the game.
So I want to talk about that. Obviously, what he's talking about in terms of the multiplayer, having it, really making sure that the Coalition doesn't have like a shaky launch with Gear 6, I think is very important as well. We have had, over the course of time, very shaky launches, to take it lightly, with Gears of War. Usually the launches are very, very bad for Gears in general. That needs to change with Gear 6 for sure if we want this to be a sustainable thing moving forward. So, having betas and all of those things are going to be very, very integral and important for the Coalition when it comes to Gear 6. It's cartoon violence. Look at Gears 1, Chunked Enemy. It was more gruesome. I agree. I definitely agree with that. I think that it was definitely more gruesome in those and more gritty in terms of like the violence and such that they had. It does feel a little bit more cartoony in Gears 5 for sure. Gears of War 4, I thought was a pretty good balance, but it kind of went to another level in Gears 5. So yeah, I agree with that.
Can you keep really engaged throughout? On that same note, I think matchmaking is another thing that a lot of us have kind of struggled or had issues with, at least in Gears 5. Teams can vary between the highest level 30s, 40s, 50s prestige and people who literally just picked up the game, and I'm not exactly sure how that all works out. I couldn't tell you the background stuff that helps match up people in that sense, but you can imagine in a match where the skill levels aren't lining up, that some games can be pretty one-sided, and ultimately people will lose interest in kind of hopping into a party. Let's say if you're not in a team full of friends or people you know, you could be in a game with some random people and essentially just they wipe the floor with you, and nobody really wants to do that on a consistent basis. Or worse, you end up in a lobby that puts you halfway across the world, which puts your ping in the hundreds or the thousands, and you really can't even literally play the game. So just more consistency in how your match made, with local people or even with just skill levels. I don't know exactly how to get that, but just for the multiplayer purpose of that, just making it more fair so that you're playing against people in your skill set, I think will do a lot for the player base as far as keeping people around and keeping people interested.
Okay, so I think I agree that, they need to have a ranked system at launch. That ranked system needs to, put people like, skill-based matchmaking, all of that stuff needs to be implemented day one with Gear 6 for sure. And I think that a lot of these things that he's talking about are definitely things that could be happening with Gear 6 and what the coalition's doing right now behind the scenes. They're making a lot of these, when we think about the changes that they're making, and they're taking their time right now. We haven't even got an announcement of Gear 6 yet. Even though we know it's coming, it's just something that they're taking their time with. I think that a lot of these things are making sure that they want to have a really good launch. They want to have all of this like content and things of that nature that are there day one, so that there's a proper place where the pro players can go. Esports scene is going to be set up, have everything like in a way where it just makes sense. And sure, guys, there's going to be issues at launch. There always is with any game. It doesn't matter what game it is. There will be issues, but the idea is like minimizing those issues. And when there are issues that come up, making sure that they're properly handling it is really what they have to do. And us as a community, we've got to be positive when this game comes out. Cannot just be giving the coalition crazy backlash, what we have, and being very toxic what has been the standard or the norm of the Gears community. And at times it's warranted, but I just think that we've got to be more positive with the coalition for sure moving forward.
Just the content, I think, on a weekly basis or seasonally isn't just what a lot of people are really interested in. Some of it's kind of cringy, some of the emotes are just kind of like, it's not something that people are willing to really pay money for if that's what the expectation is. And even in a match, I remember first turning on the game, and at the end you kind of see the person standing there and they're just like, hello. Like, what the heck was that? Or even just, I don't know, some of it's a little cringy, and a lot of it isn't worth either spending money on or really, working to grind and earn. So just thinking about the kind of content people would really be willing to put hours into earning and grinding for, and then making it unique as well. A lot of character skins, especially the Carmines, are just different colors or slight variations. And we're not saying that you have to spend hours and days and weeks on specific content just to say you spent more time, but just when you look at something and you think, well, do I really need this, or do I want this because it looks almost identical to this other armor? It doesn't really make you want to play longer. It doesn't really want to make you grind any more than you already are, just for this slight variation of a skin that you probably didn't even want in the first place. And then as far as how often content, gets out, I don't know if there's a sweet spot for that. But one thing I think all Gears fans can agree on is that just without great content up front and at a cadence that kind of drip feeds it to the fans, I don't think you're going to keep a lot of people around. I feel like there's a fear that if you drop too much great content all at once up front, people are going to get bored and not want to play the game or not want to grind for it. But I don't think that's true. Nobody really has a problem with good content. And then obviously if they enjoy the game, part of it is playing for the content, but the other part is enjoying having the content and essentially being able to show it off in match after match after match. So people are going to stick around if they like the game. You don't have to worry about drip feeding kind of filler content in between weeks or seasons. You know, essentially if you give us a lot of cool stuff up front, especially just even stuff that is way cooler than what it was in the previous games, then I think you'll keep a lot of people around longer and just ultimately make people want to grind a little more.
Okay, so I want to talk about this. I got a couple of things to talk about here. In terms of when it comes to like items and things that you're kind of grinding for in the game, I truly believe that the most important thing that they've got to do between, you know, Gears 5 to Gears 6 is making there be a reason to re-up, a reason to grind. I've always said this, guys, that no matter what the game is, it's better to have earnable items than payable items, because when you have to earn something, you're going to go back over and over again to earn it and grind for it. I'm going to give you two examples, one being Halo, the other being Call of Duty. So in Halo, think of it like this. In Halo, let's go back to Halo Reach. So in Halo Reach, you had to really grind to get some of the things that you wanted in that title. I'll give you an example. Inheritor, which was the top rank in Halo Reach, you got a really cool suit, like of armor on your character. It was like a skull like mask, and it was really an awesome looking suit that you got for getting or achieving Inheritor in Halo Reach. And so lots of people were grinding really hard for it. And I think that, you know, having those earnable items over the payable items keeps people going back and back over and over again to try to get there. Because you feel like you really earn something when you do it. But what's the point of re-upping in Gears 5? Gears 5, it was like, you know, I never re-upped in Gears 5. And the reason being was because there wasn't really a structure to what I was going to get if I did re-up. Was there anything really cool outside of a little, you know, I was on re-up 1 and you would see that in the lobbies and stuff. I always thought like with Gears of War 3, I loved their re-up system because they had icons, they had like emblems and things like that you could earn, or, you know, as you're re-upping and such, there were things to consistently gave you reason to re-up. And I just felt like that kind of was lost with Gears 5. The other thing I'm going to talk about is Call of Duty. Call of Duty, guys, Modern Warfare 2, for example, had some absolutely awesome unlockable items at the time. For its time, they were awesome. And like to get to the 10th Prestige was a huge deal. Getting to 10th Prestige and getting the 10th Prestige medallion was a massive thing that you had to earn. You couldn't just, wasn't something that you could just buy. Now, there were people, it was so popular that people would go into modded lobbies and they would, you know, try to, you know, hack their way to get to 10th Prestige and get the medallion, get everything. And it became a very popular thing in MW2. Because people like, you know, it was so grindy. And I just think that we got to get back to that here with Gear 6, is to have like stuff that you're earning. It doesn't have to be so grindy like Halo reaches getting to Inheritor rank, but it's got to be grindy, in my opinion, to really get the things that you want in place and get the things that you want to earn. I just think that there's so much stuff that you can just purchase now that kind of almost kind of gives you this option whether to grind or not. And I just think that having earnable items over payable items is massive. To be honest, re-ups don't matter. Just make level 100 mean something. No XP boost. Level 100 should feel like you earned it, like on Gears 2. When I saw wings, when you saw the wings, yeah, I agree. Like, for sure, man. Like, I think that when you got to that rank 100 or that re-up 10 or whatever it is, like, it needs to be cool. It needs to be like a prestigious thing on the leaderboard. It gets other people to want to get to that point. And it's like it gives you that clout, that ordeal inside of the lobbies. The re-ups, though, yes, I agree. Like re-ups, I think if they're done properly, like in Gears of War 3, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was perfect. Gears of War 4, I thought it was okay. Gears 5, I don't like it at all. So that definitely needs to change.
Talked about or even potentially controversial. It has to do with just better rewards and leveling and just the store system. It kind of ties in with the content aspect of things, but with the way the industry's kind of moving, obviously I've been gaming for a while, so I'm used to the game drops and then, you put in hours and hours and hours and essentially you get, some of those hard to get skins like, in Halo it'd be like you do this, get a samurai helmet or something like that, or just stuff that showed that like an achievement, you really had to earn that stuff. And I know that's not to knock the new system of things because it offers a lot of exclusive as well in a different way. I know microtransactions are pretty much here to stay at this point, but I think Gears 5 did a great job over its couple of years in improving the system in a way that seemed to work within both worlds. I think you still can introduce a system that allows you to grind and work for certain content while also having other content that essentially you charge real money for, and that you still make a profit off of some exclusive content that you really only have for a limited time in a store. The problem with that, as far as the way the current system works, is that you have iron, which you pay real money for in order to have that digital currency, versus coins, which if you just keep playing the game, you kind of earn the coins. And the way the current system works is when something comes out in the store, it costs iron, but if you wait a week, it costs coins. So essentially, if you can just stick it out for a week and grind to get enough coins, you don't really have to ever pay any real money. It kind of defeats the purpose of the iron besides having it as an option, which I get it. If somebody's going to buy it to have it now, then obviously why would you miss out on that money? It makes sense. But I think for Gears 6, there should be more content that's more difficult to get, that kind of shows that, you earned this achievement or you really had to work and grind to get this thing without the option of putting it on the store later. There were a couple instances in Gears 5 where certain executions or certain character skins were essentially reintroduced into the store after having been in the tour of duty, and a lot of people didn't really take well to that because why would we spend time grinding for it if you're just gonna charge money so that somebody else can buy it later? Kind of defeats the purpose of putting multiple hours into the game. Whereas when you look back at Gears 3, for example, Gears 3, as you leveled up, you just got more content. And so like if you were level 100, you had all the characters, you had all of the different variations of anything that could be introduced. And then with weapon skins, depending on how you did with a certain weapon, this is in Call of Duty also, just depending on how you do with a certain weapon, how many kills you get or whatever, that essentially drives the skins you're able to get with that. So it's more skill based and kind of, gives people more of a sense of pride that they're really earning and working towards just the things they unlock and can kind of show off. Now I know the Tour of Duty in a way is kind of essentially that progression system that gets you different levels of content, but sometimes it seems just like this challenge system introduces more arbitrary challenges, like killing a pouncer and escape, or I don't know, doing something in a mode that people just, when you want to play multiplayer, like if I want to say I got 1,000 kills with a long shot and now I have a diamond crystal clear emotion long shot or something, that seems to be a lot more important than go do this thing for a star and then pay to have more stars to get it faster. Again, it defeats the pride and the real skill level involved in having to get content. And I think just reintroducing that, at least at some level, and keeping that content exclusive will really keep especially a lot of veteran Gears players.
I want to talk about this. I agree, like, with a lot of stuff that he's talking about here. Like, he's talking kind of about the leveling system and all of that, and we already kind of talked about this. I think that you've got to have at launch, you have to have a path forward. Like I remember with Gears 5, they were adding re-ups as we went, and they kept on adding more and more re-ups, but they weren't giving us content really with it. They weren't giving us like reason to do it. And so it just gets back to having reason, having purpose, and earnable items versus payable items. That's the name of the game, in my opinion, when we move into Gear 6. You've got to have earnable items. Earnable, like when you re-up, there's a reason for it. He brought up Gears 3, and that's exactly the same thing I feel. I feel the exact same way he does. Gears 3 did a perfect job at doing this. Every time that you would re-up, you would get new things. And there were always new things that you could be working for and such, whether you wanted to do it in horde mode, whether you wanted to do it in multiplayer, however you wanted to do it, you could achieve those things and kind of go at it at your own pace. So yeah, for sure. Chloa TV says hello. Hey, what's going on? Appreciate you for being here for sure. JXL says no one cares what level you are now. It's too easy. Yeah, I think that the XP boost, like there's a lot of XP boosts and such. So yeah, it's become a pretty easy way to re-up and such. And it kind of gives, that's why they kept on adding more and more re-ups and such. And that's why I didn't re-up, because they weren't giving me a reason to re-up, like in Call of Duty, trying to get to the 10th prestige and get the 10th prestige medallion, or Halo Reach, getting up to Inheritor. Those were reasons to grind and really grind the game. We don't get that here with Gears 5. We had it somewhat in Gears of War 4. We had it, of course, in Gears of War 3, which is probably that should be like the standard that they look at in terms of where they go with Gear 6, in terms of the leveling system, the ranking system, because we need a ranked play immediately, day one, with launch, and skill-based matchmaking, all of those things have to be implemented day one.
Got a lot of pride I like to show off. Yeah, I did this, that, and the third, and it goes a long way when you can walk around saying I did this and I have this, and somebody can't just buy it. So for Gear 6, just having some kind of experience-based unlockable progression system, I think would really be a big improvement and a nice way to reintroduce elements of the original Gear stuff while still having certain things only available on the store for a limited time. I think you can have the best of both worlds. If you've been playing Gears over the years, you know that there have been a lot of multiplayer modes that have come and go and that have evolved. Some that come to mind are, original Gears started with Warzone, Execution, Assassination, which essentially just became Guardian, and Annex. And a lot of those really all of those I think are pretty non-existent at this point, unless you bring back Execution. And then other ones that kind of came in went like Submission, and Wingman is a popular one. Then you have other ones like Arms Race, and the list goes on and on. I think the biggest thing is that I think Gear 6 should start with a strong core of multiplayer games that really the fans want and that they play the most. Some that stand out are Team Deathmatch, King of the Hill. In general, survey and poll the fans. Make sure you know which modes they truly really want, and then keep the playlist. I think that's a good format of having the playlist style that matches objective-based game types with more kill-based ones, so on and so forth. But just make sure that the focus is on modes that are going to be often played and are really enjoyed. This may be more of a personal take, but I play a lot more objective-based ones. Like King of the Hill is my preference, but unfortunately when I go into that playlist, half the time I get stuck in game modes like Capture the Flag or Gridiron or Guardian when I really don't have any interest in playing those. Sometimes I might be in the mood for a certain kind of game type, depending on just what kind of mood I'm in, but 9 times out of 10 I feel like I get forced into game modes in a playlist that I just really don't want to play. And somehow, even if you can build that into like how it predicts which ones come up next in the voting process, you can essentially, I feel like, tie it in a way that gives the more preferred or the more often played ones more often. versus forcing us to go into like a capture the flag or a gridiron and everybody's just gonna leave anyway, and then you have to play against bots. So if Gears 6 can kind of implement that structure, a strong core structure of multiplayer modes, I think that's a good setup to keep people engaged and just interested, at least in the mainline multiplayer modes. Now, even though there's a lot of game modes that have existed over the years that some have made it into new games, it would be cool to see maybe a new game mode or maybe a revised game mode. And I guess I'm hinting at this point something like, I don't know, just in my opinion, if you brought back something like Beast Mode, I think that would be really cool. And Beast Mode was in Gears 3, it was essentially a mode where there were some people on the COG team and some people actually played as the Locust characters, and you would go head to head, and I don't know, it was a cool, innovative concept, and I thought it was a lot of fun. And especially at this point, when you have so many different enemies between the mainline Gears universe of the first 3 games and even the newer enemies that have emerged in the last few games, you know, you can do a lot with that. And I mean, how cool would it be to be able to play as a Brumak or as a Berserker? You know, I think back to Gears 2 and the last level where you're on the Brumak and you're just mowing down locusts, and obviously you can't just be broken with it, but to have like that power again in like multiplayer and have your friends trying to fight you off, it just seems like it was a really cool concept that I think you could revise and bring it back. This may be one that not all fans agree with, but I don't know. I just feel like it'd be a cool thing to reintroduce to kind of bring in something new to the newer Gears games while also kind of calling back some of the older game modes and like in Gears 3 that some of us kind of really were tied to back in the day. Kind of a random thought, but just something, even if you had like a Dead by Daylight type vibe where you were General Rom and you know you had a special ability where you could control the krill at certain areas, and I don't know, just thinking outside the box to do little things like that that give you some exclusive Locust abilities but put you head to head with your friends to make some real fun moments.
And you know what, guys? I agree with what he's saying here. I mean, a couple of things. Number one, I think that they need to, that being the coalition, need to narrow down the playlist to what the community wants. Okay, so for me personally, I like playing free-for-all, but my 2 favorite game modes are usually team-based objective game modes. I love escalation and execution. Those are the 2. So I'll do free-for-all every once in a while, but those are the 2 primary ones that I really like to play. Now everyone has different ones that they like. You know, some people like King of the Hill, Team Deathmatch. I mean, there's a number of them, but I think if you get like a core amount and then you have like a ranked playlist, then you have like for the casual people who just like to play, and like, you know, just fry other teams or go at it free for all, you have those as playlists as well. Sometimes I think if you have too much, it just spreads the community out in like a major way. And so I think definitely kind of honing it down, narrowing down the number of game modes, I think is very, very important. Number 2, a game mode like Beast Mode, I think would be absolutely awesome to bring back. I've said this a ton of times on the YouTube channel, guys. You guys can check out all of my Gears of War content there, but Beast Mode would be awesome to bring back. I'd also like them to make another game mode, like something that's just new, like, because in Gears of War 4 we got Escalation, and I thought Escalation was like the best new game mode I had played in a long time. So I'm always down for them to try different game modes or to bring out like a new game mode. I just don't want them to kind of spread themselves too thin where it's like, you know, they're working on just a number of different new game modes. I'd rather them just kind of work on one game mode that they think is, you know, well received in the coalition, and then kind of test it out to the general public and such, see what the community thinks about it. The special event should return as well. 2v2 Nashers shouldn't be a fixed playlist. They should appear monthly with added exclusive rewards that can't be earned outside of that game mode. It's an interesting thought. I think 2v2 Nashers would be really cool. I think they could come up with some pretty cool ideas for sure. to have like, yeah, somewhat of like special events or, monthly events that bring you back just for those events and such, just because they're going to be different. And yeah, I love that concept. I think it could be something really special in Gear 6 for sure.
Escape didn't hit home for some people. I know a lot of people who played the heck out of Escape and they leveled up a lot and it was great for them. For me personally, I didn't really feel like Escape was the mode for me, and it seemed like a lot of the challenges and just a lot of times it was kind of forced on us. So I think the focus should just be between all game modes, making sure it's what the fans want, especially in this game if it's supposed to be the last game in the series, which we still have to wait and see. But just a focus on what the fans kind of want in that aspect, even doing some of that research up front before the game comes out, which I'm sure it's probably in development right now, I think will go a long way when we finally get to the game. The last thing that I think will really make Gear 6 pop is having just good, memorable multiplayer maps. Now, Gears has had a lot of iconic maps throughout its history. Places like Canals, Blood Drive, Gridlock, just to name a few. Some people could argue that they're kind of tired of them, and they've been in every Gears game since 1, 2, 3, so, it makes sense. But just, I think having access to those maps, at least in the beginning, would be just nice in order to start off with maps that we like, to have a bigger variety. In Gears 5, I think the problem was there were only a handful of maps, new maps that we had, and so you felt like you were pretty much playing the same match every other match. And if you were to just include some of these older maps that you're eventually going to roll out anyway earlier into Gear 6, I think it would just give, in a weird way, a fresher play to how things are going on. At least give us breathing room between, if we're playing in a new Gear 6 map, to kind of have a couple of other maps and cleanse our palette before we jump back into the same game and the same game type and do that over and over and over again. So just the big thing is to poll the fans, survey what maps are really favorites. And I know it's hard to get a sometimes consistent take on that, because I know everybody kind of has their own favorite maps and moments that happen in each map. But just take a handful of them, look at some. I think Raven Down, funny enough, I've seen as a really requested map that, interestingly enough, didn't get brought into Gears 5. But that's one that, maybe you introduce into Gear 6 on top of like the other ones like, Mansion, or just some older ones that maybe weren't in Gears 5, and then older ones that are in Gears 5 that are loved, and you don't really have to do a lot to them. I know there's always a want to revise over time, what these maps look like as things happened in the world, and that'd be a good touch, but just more than anything, having the maps available, I think, is the important part. And as far as new maps go, kind of follow similar templates, maybe not copy paste, but just take from what works in these other maps. Canals, for example, is pretty straightforward. You start on both sides, you get the power weapon sniper in each side, you got one in the middle, and then you can play the sides. Even Gridlock, you start off, you got the power weapon on one side, power weapon on the right. You can choose which way you want to divide. Just stick to something simple. And for example, Pahanu, I think that's how you pronounce it, that map for me didn't really hit home, and a lot of people I play with didn't enjoy it that much. It's visually stunning, of course, but it just, I don't know, it didn't really work. Too big, just a lot of layers and levels that didn't really feel like they were fun in a match. So just keeping the maps simple, straightforward, and just playing off of what worked in some of the iconic ones, as well as tying that back into the moments in campaign, of course. In the Mansion, we had just the big fight inside as we were kind of learning more about the history with Marcus and his dad and stuff. So being able to play off of some of these iconic epic moments in the campaign and then bringing that map into multiplayer, I think really works in tandem to help build more iconic moments and just ultimately make us as the players feel more connected to what's going on when we're playing in that map.
And I agree. So we're going to stop it there. when it comes to the maps, I mean, bringing in like some of the older maps that are classic that everybody loves is good for sure. But I also think that you got to come up with some new game modes, or I should say some new maps that are going to be from this upcoming title, Gears 6. You know, like we were talking about, we'd love to see this be a little more gritty, a little bit more dark. And so hopefully some of those maps from the campaign can translate over to the multiplayer, and it can be something absolutely special in a massive, massive way. If you guys haven't, definitely check out Hadouken. I think that he creates some pretty cool content. So those are the things that we would like to see, guys, and what we want in Gears 6. What are some of the things that you guys want to see? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Gears 6 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.